John, welcome to the wonderful world of Crowdsource the Truth Under Strike by YouTube. The Jason Goodman YouTube channel, as you may have heard, has been attacked, as usual, by malicious social engineers. How are you today, John?
I think I'm doing better than you are. My channel hasn't been attacked yet, but I guess the evening is young, so we'll see what happens.
Right.
Yeah, there's a number of people out there that absolutely don't want the stories you're telling being told. And again, you're doing it multiple times a day. I don't know how you do it. I tip my hat to you. Again, I think you're doing remarkable work. And the fact that you're doing it 6 days a week, I mean, it's incredible. You know, I'm lucky if I can get 2 out a week. So I'm in awe of the level of production that you're putting out. It's just spectacular.
Well, thank you, John.
And
I do want to remind people.
And the quality is amazing.
Thank you very much. And I want to remind people that they can watch the videos that you're producing throughout the week by going to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. It looks like there's been some use of your material by InfoWars. I'm sad when that happens. I like InfoWars. Alex Jones has been generous with me. I wonder to what extent he knows that this is happening versus just people on his staff maybe trying to, get the stuff.
Well, actually, this time around, it wasn't just blatant use of my graphics, which is what they did last time. This time, I think we kind of motivated them with our show. Obviously, they're watching your show. You were just on his show a couple weeks ago. And obviously, they're watching my show because they used a bunch of the material for their anniversary show on the Las Vegas shooting.
Oh,
so,
right.
Right. So that was last October. So they're watching you. They're watching me. But you, they invited on. Me, they used the material and then acknowledged it 3 days later on a different show without Alex. So this time around, what they did, I think, is they just kind of got motivated by what they saw us doing here with the charts. And so what Alex says is that he hired somebody who's a statistical analyst or professor or something, to come in and do these analysis. And Alex holds up a bunch of charts. But the stuff that he's charting is the wrong stuff. And so I made a video to help the audience understand that you have to be really discerning with this stuff. You have to understand the differences. You and I reported weeks ago about how certain states had stopped reporting, like New Jersey and New York and Michigan had stopped reporting influenza, right? So when you're looking at states and what the states are reporting, it's different from what the CDC has in their mortality databases, and that's what we've been using. So, basically they're a couple months behind. So I'm not throwing that much shade at them, but, you and I have been way ahead of the story for some time. I applaud that he's even comparing coronavirus and influenza in the same sentence. So that part of it, it's hard for me to get upset. I'm thrilled that Alex Jones is bringing that up. And this time around, they didn't use these charts that we're going to show everybody tonight. The charts. I mean, it's not like he just lifted my charts. That's pretty much what they did last time. They didn't do that. They made their own charts, but of the wrong stuff. So it's like, Alex, pay closer attention, right? If you're going to watch, watch.
To his credit, I think it is difficult for, people who are running these operations where you got people working for you. You never know how material gets to him. As I said, I like to give him the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people said, oh, he's a sellout. He did X, Y, or Z when he had to retract some statement. I don't think people watching necessarily understand the power that a federal court has over somebody. If there's a judgment against you, I mean, it's got to be abided by like the law. So if he loses a lawsuit where somebody says you have to make a public retraction and apology, even if he doesn't want to do that or doesn't like that, he's compelled to do it. So, like I said, Alex Jones has been generous with me. I appreciate what he's done with InfoWars. I also appreciate your point of view. I hate it when people take my work and use it on their own show, because it's like, you and I are out here trying to create this sponsor exclusive show on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen. patreon.com/IM John Cullen, and Subscribestar and Patreon/crowdsource the truth. And when people take that work, it undermines what we're trying to do. You know, there's going to be social engineers, John, and cranky people who are going to say, you just want money. I mean, if I just wanted money, I would do something that doesn't care at all about people or integrity and just be a crook or a criminal or maybe a lawyer and just go after money. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find like-minded individuals like yourself who are seriously concerned about the future of our country and to create a business that allows us to do the work that we know we need to do to basically gather this information, broadcast it out to everybody so that they can see it, evaluate it, form their own opinions about it, give us feedback that helps us get to better answers. And we need to have a sustainable business to be able to do that.
Indeed. And that's why I'm not, you won't hear me aggressively attack Alex, because again, I'm eager for his audience and coronavirus side by side. It's a good comparison. Even if he's using the wrong graphs, at least he's having the conversation.
Right. Opening the door there, as it were. Now,
exactly.
And you've prepared for us again tonight another one of your excellent presentations. You know, another thing that I've sort of taken to doing, there are several guests in the sponsor exclusive series who spend all week basically compiling information, and they provide the links. A lot of people who are subscribed to Patreon and Subscribestar/crowdsource the truth ask me where are the links. The links are offered on John's Patreon and Subscribestar page. Obviously, people watching on Crowdsource the Truth get to see what we're talking about and can extract the links and go to the sites and do the searches themselves. But that added little bit of convenience. I don't want to take away from you, John, and your work and the stuff that you've done. But tonight we're going to be talking about some fact-checking that you've done. This Jonathan Swan interview from a few days ago, AXIOS News sat down with President Trump. I found the guy to be pretty disrespectful in general. What can people expect tonight when they tune in on the sponsor exclusive hour?
Well, we're going to take a look at this. I guess they're calling it an interview. It doesn't appear to be an interview when you really break it down, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down. And we're going to look at some of the questions, and we're going to look at some of the declarative statements that Jonathan Swan made, and we're going to fact check it. We're going to say, well, is that correct? Is that supposition correct? Is the president's answer to the question accurate? Is the president's some of his suppositions, are they correct? And we're going to fact check both of them. And I can tell you, I don't pull punches, and they're, you know, in both cases, you're going to sense a little bit of disappointment. And in one case, it's probably simply because the president doesn't have our materials at his fingertips. He's got this other junk that his staff is giving him that's just not quite as good as what we have. And so when he tries to make a point with the materials, not quite as good as what we're going to show tonight. And in fact, we've got enough time in the pre-show on YouTube to show the audience the types of materials that I would be preparing for the president for this interview, unlike the materials that he showed up with. What would the difference be? If I was on the president's staff somewhere in the basement of the White House working up spreadsheets and charts, what would they look like for this interview? And that's what I prepared for tonight's YouTube show. So for our patrons only, we're going to break the interview down. We're going to go through it step by step, and also for my patrons at Subscribestar and Patreon, I have a special episode of Hypothetically Speaking just for patrons. And that goes live tonight, Eastern Time, New York. It goes live at 8 p.m. So that's just for patrons. And it's a special episode of Hypothetically Speaking about this topic that breaks it down even further. But I wanted to do some of this investigation live with you, where we can go to Worldometers and all that. So that's what we're going to be doing with the patrons at the patron only hour. But right now, let's show the audience what some of the slides might look like. Also, every week we get one or two comments from somebody saying, "Why is the guy in hat and sunglasses?" Can you do a 30-second explain to them how I got here and why my life potentially is in danger?
Yeah,
Can you
there's a
explain that?
major portion of John's story that was revealed during my trip to Thailand that I promise you, John, and audience, as soon as I can get out from under the litany of lawsuits that seem to flow my way like so many raindrops, I will absolutely finish that production and we will get it out. But John has a very specific connection to some of the things that he's revealed in his Las Vegas reporting that cause him to be concerned about revealing his identity. We all know that facial recognition is a big deal. People who have been Patreon and Subscribe Star sponsors on Crowdsource the Truth for a couple of weeks will have gotten to see my encounter with Eric Schmidt on Fifth Avenue here in New York City. He was quite quick to take a picture of me when we were having a debate, let's say, in the street. And I certainly think somebody like that would have access to technology to immediately identify me based on my face. And perhaps, I'm not saying he did this, but it's conceivable that he might still have some friends at Google who could figure out what's going on with Jason Goodman. He's a YouTuber, and why don't we mess with him a bit? So John is protecting his identity in a way that he feels is appropriate. And I think that if people don't like how any particular guest presents themselves, they have the option to turn the show off, and insulting the guests is not going to do it. I like your suggestion, John, that you might take a job in the basement of the White House. I don't know if you're aware of this, but apparently Richard Nixon had a bowling alley installed in the basement. I don't know if
Absolutely.
you're,
Yeah.
I think you've told me you are a very good bowler, or am I confusing you with somebody else?
No, that wouldn't be me. No, I'm not a good bowler.
I had a friend who could bowl
So
like 200 every time. I am terrible at bowling, but that's a different
that,
story.
that and there's a term for that. Knowing that you're not good at something is called conscious incompetence. So there's a term for that. You're consciously incompetent. You know you're not good at it.
Unlike Dr. Fauci, I would not throw
Exactly.
out the first bowling ball at the World
Exactly.
Series of Bowling because it would shoot
Exactly.
across the thing and hit somebody in another lane in the way that his first pitch did. So we got a couple of minutes, John. Do you want to go into
Yeah.
this a bit?
Indeed.
Let's do it.
We'll just flip through them. So the first slide is the first slide that I would have used, or I would have had at the top of the deck for the president to use. And that's our next slide. So let's pop next page. And that's showing how the country's doing, right? So Jonathan Swan tries to put forth this notion that it's a disaster, everything is bad. And when I look at how we're doing on a weekly basis, this chart is from the CDC's mortality database showing deaths per week from coronavirus. Now, in the last couple weeks, it's been starting to go back down. But after 4th of July, we had 3 bad weeks. And in fact, those 3 bad weeks were right after you and I reported that it had been going down for 3 months. And the next day they started going up. Right. So they went up for 3 weeks, but now they're starting to come back down. And when you look at the levels, this is nothing like what we were going through back in April. Right. You look back in April and you look at those numbers, it's like crazy. We're nowhere near that. So we're going in the right direction. The president has said this is going to go away, right? And he's absolutely right. Just like MERS went away, just like SARS went away, this is going to go away. And you see it's going away. Yes, there's a little hump. Now, how do we account for that little hump? Where is that little hump? Where is it taking place? And that's what we're going to see. So this is called logic and reason and math. And this is what Jonathan Swan didn't really come prepared to discuss. So let's go to the next slide.
Yeah. And by the way, John, they try to paint Trump's statement that it's going to go away as some uninformed magical explanation. What he's essentially talking about is the natural human response of the overwhelmingly healthy population with a functional immune system that adapts to this and the large number of people that, as they say, can self-resolve, basically be exposed to the pathogen, develop immunity, and not get sick from it?
I think it would be safe to say the president is correct because they all go, everything goes away. If they didn't go away, we'd all be
We'd be
dead. They
dead,
all
right?
go, right. So MERS went away, SARS went away, everything goes away. So of course he's right. And again, to put it in perspective, somebody commented that I'm not putting the coronavirus deaths in perspective. Well, here's your perspective. This season from influenza, there's 210,000 people that are dead, according to the CDC. So all these numbers are coming from the CDC's websites, and these were updated within the last 24 hours. So let's go to the next slide because the story of how the country's doing is really sort of the story of two different cities, or the tale of two cities here. So first of all, this influenza outbreak has lasted a remarkably long time. 210,000 people are logged as having died from PNI, in addition to the 160,000 that we have logged as having died from COVID. So these are tremendous numbers. We've never had numbers like this before, right? But we stopped talking about the influenza outbreak in January. As soon as coronavirus moved into the news cycle, uh, the mainstream media lost the ability to take care of, feed, and love both a cat and a dog at the same time. They
Right.
couldn't do it. So one of the animals died, and that was influenza, and they just stopped covering it. They just stopped covering it. We don't know why. Maybe we do. We have a hypothesis why, but we can't be certain. So let's go to the next slide because I want to show you a bunch of good news about coronavirus. And this is what the mainstream media continues to avoid. That Bill de Blasio, even in his complete ineptitude, it's going away. It's going away despite the fact that Bill de Blasio has no idea what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
This is not, you're not looking at this curve and saying, wow, those guys on his team did a remarkable job. No, this is natural. This is what happens. It goes away. And that's what's happened in New York City. Now, New York City was devastated by it. Let's go to the next slide if we can.
I'll just add quickly, I'm not sure I agree that de Blasio doesn't know what he's doing. He might be very in control of what he's doing. He's just not doing things that are in the interest of New Yorkers, the city of New York, the economy, the public health, nothing like that.
Yeah, I mean, as cities go, there's not a lot of cities in the world that have as many people dead as New York City. And
Right.
New York City's population at about 9 or 10 million is just a little bit more than Hong Kong. And we'll talk about Hong Kong in a while. But this is New York State. Andrew Cuomo, once again, when I say he doesn't know what he's doing, I mean, he doesn't really know what the best practices are to manage the virus. If he did, he wouldn't have 30,000 people dead, right? So this is a natural curve. This is a natural progression. It's going away in New York State, and New York State and New York City were the worst afflicted, right? This was
The
the
epicenter.
worst, absolutely. And this is what's happening. So, in the interview, when we go to our patron only hour on Subscribestar and Patreon, and we go into the Axios HBO clip, so we're going to go into the footage, and you're going to hear Jonathan Swan talk about it being out of control, out of control. I said, what is out of control
Right.
when you look at that curve, right? And that curve is heading down, 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 down. What is the out of control part?
Yeah.
Where is that?
I don't know. I thought HBO was in the business of making like comedy shows and dramas with boobs in them, like The Sopranos. I guess they're the news business now as well. But yeah, I thought it was a really insulting approach that Jonathan Swan took to that interview. And just briefly on Governor Cuomo, in addition to doing things that seem really counterproductive to the health of the people and the economy of New York State, he seems to equivocate every day. Now he's saying that everything is fine, we can open schools, but you need masks everywhere you go, and they need checkpoints around New York City because it's such a terrible situation. Really doesn't make very much sense to me at all, John. We are close to out of time here on our lead in to the sponsor exclusive show on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. Simulcast, of course, on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Anything you want to say real quickly before we head over there?
Certainly. I'll pose a hypothetical question to Governor Andrew Cuomo. Hypothetically speaking, if today is the last day of new cases in New York and the last day of deaths, and effective tomorrow, there's no more new cases in New York and no one else dies, as of tomorrow, for how long are you going to make the children wear masks in school if there's no more cases of coronavirus and immediately? Children will continue to wear masks until when, Andrew? Until Thanksgiving? Until Christmas? Until Easter? What's your plan, Andrew?
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
Bugaboo Boone tells us that they believe that de Blasio is the worst mayor in U.S. history. I think that might be right. Certainly,
Top 10. Certainly
terrible
top 10.
outcome
Certainly top 10.
here
Yeah,
in
top
New
10.
York City.
Top 10 for sure.
But people are going to be very intrigued, I think, to see the data. You've been doing great work, John, since this began. So I want to thank all of our generous Patreon and Subscribestar sponsors who make these shows possible. And once again, just remind people, if you're following the show but you're not yet subscribed to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel, make sure you get on there. John has got a lot of updates and he fills in a lot more detail, and as well as including the simulcasts to each of the shows that we do. He's got his Hypothetically Speaking series, and people who've been following his work are going to want to be subscribed over here. So make sure you get over to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel, and don't forget to get onto Patreon and Subscribestar. We'll see everybody there in less than 10 minutes. Thanks for watching.